Now, hey, I know what you're thinking. How am I going to convince you to buy a bottle of Remus Gatsby if I won't even pay for it myself? This right here is a 2-ounce sample. We have a Patreon page. We do some bottle splits once in a while for these more exclusive, more high-end bottles that we don't feel like spending money on, but we still want to try. This right here, 20 bucks to get to my door, not a bad price for it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to answer that question for you today. Is this worth the 200 bucks? Let's get into it. Now make sure you stick around for this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week because we are going to talk about entry proof. This bottle comes in at 98.1 proof and that's cash strength. I've never heard of such a low cash strength, and entry proof has everything to do with that. I have a link to an article down below. I learned a lot about entry proof that I never knew before, but we're going to take care of all of that after the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. All right, hold on. That's right, here in our glass, we have Remus Gatsby Reserve. Now let's talk about everything we do know about this bottle. 75-21-4 for one mash bill, 60-36-4 for a second mash bill. It has a 15-year-old age statement, which means this is at least 15 years old. The youngest whiskey that goes into this is 15 years old. It's from Ross Squibb, and as we talked about, it is $200. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is the second release from this expression. I don't think people were expecting a second release either. I think they were kind of just expecting the first release. That was going to be a special release, and that was going to be the end of it. But they came out with a second release, so let's get into it. Price, taste, drinkability. We always start with drinkability at 98.1 proof. How much ethanol is on this glass? Y'all, come here. Obviously, this is sub 100 proof, but I've got to tell you, phenomenal when it comes to drinkability. I don't know if it's the 15 year, I don't know if it's the two mash bills that they put together. This is absolutely crazy when it comes to drinkability. I know it's sub 100 proof. I'm not saying that it's supposed to drink super hot, but at the end of the day, something going on in this glass that just makes it sip super, I'm going to use the word here, smooth. This is easy to drink. I'll be completely honest with you. I love this when it comes to drinkability. One more sip, I'll give you a score. I honestly have to look up when this was released because if this was 2023 and this wasn't on people's whiskey of the year, I don't really know what they're looking for right here. This is phenomenal. Drinkability 98.1 proof. We always give it a 7.0 if it drinks right at its proof. I'm going to go like 8.01. 8.01, and that's at 98.1 proof. Again, normally you have to be in that 115, 120 to get that high, but 8.01 is where we're going to put it. It definitely deserves to be in the eights, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. It is only 98.1 proof. Let's get into taste on this now. If you thought that drinkability on this was good, just wait until I tell you about taste. Some whiskeys, when you drink them, you like hit a wall of flavor, right? And it's not always a bad wall of flavor, but it is a wall of flavor. I call it like a sharpness. There's almost like an edge to it where you hit that, you recognize it, and then you can move on. For this one, it's almost like I feel like riding in choppy water. Like sometimes it's not that bad, but sometimes you just want a smooth, nice, easy sailboat ride onto the horizon. This is your smooth, easy sailboat ride right here. You get so much sweetness on the front of this. You get a lot of rye spice in the middle, but it's not, you can never find where they meet. It's just a perfect balance all the way through. The 15 years, I was expecting to hate this because it was over oaked. It's not. I don't know how they did it, but it's not. At 15 years, this is perfectly done. There's not a lot of dryness, not a lot of tannins. I don't really know what in this glass that I don't like. I'm trying to find something. I don't have a lot to work with, but right now, I mean, I got to look up again. If this was this year, I don't know if this is not 2024 Whiskey of the Year, and it's only, what, February? There's almost like a citrus note that also comes along with sweetness. I want to say like an orangey note, like an orange juice that has a little extra sugar in it or something like that. Then again, you get into that spice, but it's not like a dense, heavy rye spice. It's not that black pepper or allspice. More like a sweet cinnamon or something like that when it comes to the spice. And then again on the end, it just tapers off into this perfect, very long finish, if you ask me, of a little bit of oak and a little bit of tannins. Maybe the slightest dryness on my tongue here, but nothing overwhelming. This I really don't think I can talk any more highly about how good this tastes. People talk about the experience of drinking whiskey as well. When you go to sip this, this is why Glencairns are so important. If you're not drinking out of something that's like funneled up, when you go to sip this, you're obviously going to smell it on the way. And there is a perfumey note on this. I don't know what that is. Usually I get that with something that's maybe finished. I don't know. People say they get like perfumey on MGP, but I don't normally get that. But there is like a perfumey smell when you bring this to your nose. This is phenomenal. I'm going to take one more sip because this is all we have left for our Bourbon Bomb of the Week and price. Let's take one more sip, then I'll give you a score. Maybe my problem is I need to be drinking more lower proof whiskey. I know people hate on lower proof whiskey. You don't get the bang for your buck. Shut up. If you can have a good lower proof whiskey, I would take that all day because this right here stands out as one of the better lower proof whiskeys that I've ever had. And I will say sub 100 proof is lower proof. But this is going to come in, I mean, I can't go nines, but we'll definitely go high eights. 8.96 when it comes to taste on this. Again, I'm going to make it very difficult to get nines this year, but an 8.96 is pretty much as close as you can get. And last but not least, I know we got to talk about it. Let's talk about price on this bottle right here. $200, right? I mentioned it before. Would I spend $200 on this bottle right here? But let's talk about what they have in this. 15-year-old whiskey. What are we mad about there? Ross and Squibb, is it oversaturated in the market? Maybe. This is the best of the best. It's their barrels. They're putting this release out. They're obviously going to give themselves the best stuff. The proof, we can proof hound all we want, but if it's delicious and it's this good with drinkability, I'm not going to be too upset about the proof. What do you want? 120 proof? Is that really going to change your entire life over if this is good, not good, or worth $200? I'm not going to say so. I'm going to say they're probably dipping their toe into, I don't want to give this too much to the secondary market like a lot of these other distilleries are. Maybe if the secondary market doesn't exist, this is $150, but they're like, hey, it's going to go for $275 on the secondary market. If people think it's good, let's bump it up to $200. I'm not mad at it. I would spend $200. If I see this on the shelf at $200, I'd buy one for my collection. So now we got to give it a score. I mean, look, it's above average when it comes to drinkability. It's way above average when it comes to taste. So at $90 average for a bottle of whiskey today, it's definitely above average when it comes to price. But with everything else considered, we're going to put it right above that average 7.0 and say like a 7.66 when it comes to price on this. Again, if it was a little bit lower, we get a better score, but 7.66, everything else considered, seems like a fair spot for it. But listen, while I add these scores up, let's send it over to the quick bourbon bomb of the week and learn a little bit more about entry proof and how this can be called cash strength at only 98.1 proof. Let's do it. Cheers, y'all. So normally when I do my bourbon bomb of the week, I'll go through, I'll read a bunch of articles, I take a bunch of notes, I'll listen to some podcasts, and I'll form my own opinion and give that to you. But for this one, I've learned something myself, and we're going to go with one person and one person only, and that is the whiskey reviewer. Check him out. The link to this article will be in the description below. He says, and I quote, MGP bourbons reportedly have a barrel entry proof of 120. Now, barrel entry proof is what they take the whiskey and put it into the barrel at. 120 is a pretty standard, usually around that 120, 125 mark is what I've heard for most places. But here's where things get different. He continues to say, and I quote, high humidity tends to lower the proof of whiskey as it ages. Now, that's something that I did not know. I always assumed that whiskey went up in proof as it ages. Water evaporates, you get more consolidated alcohol vapors, and that's how you get a higher proof whiskey. So going from 120 proof to 98.1 proof, he says here under 100 proof in 15 years seems under that logic. But Michter's, which is said to have a lower entry proof of 103, which participates in the premium high age statement bourbon category as well, sells a 20-year-old bourbon at barrel strength that's 114 proof. So the math ain't mathin'. He continues to say, so we have two bourbons, high age statements coming to market now, which are aged in Kentucky. One went from 120 to 98. The other went from 103 to 114. This seems paradoxical, and I've got to agree. So how can they both be in Kentucky, both be under similar circumstances, but one dropping in proof that substantially and one raising in proof in the other direction? And this is where I learned more. This says the barrel is a breathable vessel. Most enthusiasts know whiskey evaporates from the barrel over time, but the conditions in which the barrel ages determines how much of which part evaporates. I was always under the assumption that the water is what evaporates, and that leaves you a higher proof. But this does say hot, dry conditions will pull more water out of the barrel, leaving the alcohol to concentrate. Warm, damp environments will keep the water in the barrel, but allow the alcohol to depart. So, this whole science of bourbon aging just got a lot more difficult for somebody like me. I don't know what to expect anymore. 120 proof down to 98.1 in 15 years, or 103 up to 114. I don't care either way. I will tell you though, this is absolutely delicious. So what do you guys think? Is this barrel aging thing something different from Michter's over to MGP, or is this just luck of the draw when it comes to the Angel share? Cheers. No matter what happened to these barrels over the last 15 years, I'll tell you what, they made a damn good whiskey at the end of it, and this bottle comes in at an 8.21. Now, back in the day, that might not be a great score, but I will tell you, for a $200 bottle of whiskey to hit the 8.2 mark, it's an absolutely fantastic spot for this. This right here is definitely one of my favorite whiskeys. We're just getting good whiskey after this point, but this right here is very, very good whiskey. If you have an opportunity again, if I see this at $200, I'm definitely picking it up. If you've tried it and you didn't like it, I want to know what you didn't like about it in the comment section below. If you tried it and loved it, let me know about that as well. But in the meantime, make sure you check me out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Go click that follow button over there. Click that like and subscribe here on YouTube. I would appreciate that very much. Please check out our Patreon page and our Discord, both those links in the description below. Please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly and stay healthy, stay happy. Stay finding good $200 bottles of whiskey because there's not many out there anymore. Cheers, y'all. Sad it's gone.